Hello friends, and welcome back. The new moon is once again over Bodh Gaya, and we're beginning to enter now our final month of the Developing the Mind program. We've been in the middle recently of a block of working with the Brahma-Viharas, looking at some of the details of the descriptions of the four sublime states, as they're sometimes called, loving kindness and compassion we've just done. And now in this next unit, we're going to be moving into looking at gladness, or mudita, and equanimity. As I mentioned in the material, there's really no fixed translation of mudita. I'm calling it gladness here. Often we'll see it as appreciative joy or sympathetic joy. There's really a problem with any word we use for it, but the basic idea is to feel good when something good happens to somebody else. It's a pretty straightforward idea, but hard to translate. We've been looking at these four states of mind in two dimensions. One is as sort of fleeting states. Any moment that one can experience loving kindness, for example, or equanimity is beneficial. All throughout our day, we have hundreds, perhaps thousands of opportunities to just drop in to feeling good about other people, about ourselves, about good things happening, feeling compassion for people. We have the ability to catch ourselves favoring or opposing something and getting wound up about it in some little way, and simply backing away into an attitude of equanimity. You know, you're paying close attention, but you're not leaning into or leaning away from what's happening. But the other aspect of these are really foundations for deep concentration practice. The Brahma-Viharas are practices that one can abide in for a long time, an hour at a time, just feeling loving kindness, just feeling compassion, just feeling gladness or equanimity. And moment after moment after moment, these states can become established in the mind. There are formal meditations for doing so. Now, as we move away from the Brahma-Viharas over the next few weeks, we're going to be looking more at the issue of effort. You really can't talk about mindfulness or meditation without the issue of effort. The most important thing is to really define what we understand to be skillful effort. We know there are ways that we can strive and try hard and yearn for something that's not very healthy, not very successful. We can get overwrought. One of the images we'll see is of a string on an instrument that's too tight, you know. The sound is going to be sharp and harsh and out of balance. But of course we all perhaps are also familiar with the experience of being a little too lax, a little too lazy, a little too, acquiescent. And sometimes we really need to conjure up energy, and push ourselves a little, step up to the plate, make it happen, So a big part of a skill in meditation or any kind of mental discipline is really finding that right balance. And it is a balance, is a good word for it, between too much or too little effort. So we'll be looking at the texts that talk about that. And a really interesting text that describes two different approaches to effort, towards putting forth energy. And it says here, there are some things that cause suffering because we're not looking at them carefully and striving with diligence. We're too lax, and so we suffer in some ways. But there's some things, that we're suffering because we're not relaxing enough. We're not just being equanimous with what's happening. And so it says, you can apply a heightened effort, and that's going to overcome some obstacles and create some good effects. But there are other times when you have to simply look on with equanimity and not try to force anything, and just be patient and allow transformations to occur on their own. So once again, another text that really talks about the balance. There are some times when effort needs to be positive and forceful. There are other times it has to be more passive. And knowing the right time to use the right approach is a big part of the skill of mental training. Then we're going to go into a section on working with mental states. Not so much the technical meditation around breath or body or feeling tones, but more the way we might deal with things out in the world in everyday life. One of them is simply encouraging us to be paying attention all the time. And very systematically and very exhaustively it goes through. When you're about to do something, be aware. When you are in the middle of doing something, be aware. When you've already have done something, be aware of that. And this awareness is directed in the direction of understanding whether this is a helpful thing to do or not. Whether this thing that you're about to do, that you are doing or you have done, is contributing to your health and well-being, or if it's detracting from it. Again, it's this idea of applying understanding to what we're seeing in our mental discipline. It's not just simply being with whatever happens, but understanding that some of what we see happening is beneficial to us, and some of what we see happening is not. It's harmful. And so learning how to let go or stop doing the things that are harmful, and how to encourage and feel good about the things that you do that are helpful, that part of it. It's kind of putting the meditation into a dynamic functioning. And we're also going to be looking at this notion of what they call practicing austerity. We'll talk more about that in the text, but how the word is used. But the idea is basically a caution from the Buddha that meditation itself, especially these concentration states we've been looking at in the jhana, and in some cases brahmaviharas, these states of heightened concentration, one-pointed concentration, are not necessarily transformative. They feel good, and they're doing some good at blocking out the negative stuff that could come up in the mind and developing the positive. But often we can emerge from long periods of meditation not much changed, not much deeply transformed in some of our behaviors and our habits of mind and body and speech. And so he really places emphasis in this text on sort of committing oneself to making fundamental change in habitual responses to things. Other people may do things that are harmful, but we're going to commit ourselves to not do things that are harmful, and so forth. An interesting text with a lot to offer. And then finally, we're going to round out this month, and we're going to round out the course with a close look at one of our favorite discourses, the Metta Sutta, the Discourse on Loving Kindness. In 2 weeks, the first text, we're going to look at the first half of the text, the first 5 of the 10 verses, and in the second text, we'll look at the last 5 of the 10 verses. And this text really talks about loving kindness from all 3 perspectives: the importance of sort of integrity or ethics, of a kind of a healthy, skillful mindset in one's behavior and lifestyle and so forth, and how that sets up a tone. And it also talks about developing this intention using phrases like that we know well: may all beings be happy, may all beings be safe and free from harm. And it even goes on towards the end to culminate in a sense of wisdom, that when you see things clearly, that's what's going to be transformative. So the Metta Sutta gives us a way of sort of wrapping up and winding up all of the teachings on mental development in one particular package. And I think you'll find it quite valuable and interesting to get down into the details of that text and look at the exact wording and the structure of it and so forth. It's really quite lovely. It's one of the texts that's most memorized by many, many Buddhists around the world. It's delightful to hear chanted and to engage with chanting. And I think it's an auspicious way for us to round out this program. So I encourage you to work diligently for the next moon phase, for the next 4 weeks. look at some of the aspects of this course that we're presenting towards the end. And most importantly, of course, allow yourself the time and the inclination to see if you can weave these teachings into your everyday practice, into your everyday living of life. As I've said many times in this program, this material is meant to be transformative. It's there not to entertain us or to intrigue us or to give us something to talk about or think about. It's there to practice, to bring on board, to instantiate in our own experience. Look for ways that it makes sense or that one can challenge it. Look for ways that it can contribute, often in very small incremental steps, to your understanding the world around you and understanding yourself better than you might otherwise do. It's a valuable enterprise, and I hope that you're finding it valuable and useful, and that you'll continue with skillful effort over the next few weeks. Thank you very much.